You know, we talk a lot in these COVID-19 days of flattening the curve, but in terms of building interest in process-based management, we want to steepen the curve, and we want to spread process infection.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to another episode of Process Pioneers. Today I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Roger Tregear. Now, Roger, you might have heard his name before. He's got quite a number of reports and papers out there, as well as a couple of books, authoring a couple of books, including Reimagining Management, and also working on this book, Questioning BPM, which I would really encourage you to pick up and purchase and have a read through. It's a collaboration of around 33 authors, basically answering a number of questions around BPM. But I'm so excited for today's interview. A lot of people know you, Roger, and I just want to thank you for joining me here.
It's a pleasure, Daniel. Good to be with you.
That's great. That's good. So obviously, Roger, he's a BPM consultant. He works extensively throughout the world, throughout the APAC region, and currently doing a lot of work in Africa and the Middle East. What I might do to get started, Roger, is I'll pass the ball to you to give us a bit of a background or history, so that I guess the audience that may not have heard of you before or may not know you all that well have a bit of a grid or a framework for who you are, and maybe start with, I guess, where that first interest or the original interest in the world of process first began.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. So very briefly, I started my working life in electrical engineering, working for a computer company, IT machinery support, moved from that into telecommunications, drifted from there into management consulting, and I was there for quite some time. And then one day, just by happenstance, I got to meet and go to a presentation with someone that I know you know, and many will, Michael Roseman, Professor Michael Roseman from Queensland University of Technology. And Michael gave a short presentation at this lunchtime thing about process modeling and process management and process improvement. And I discovered at that point that, and this is like, I don't know, must be 20 years ago, I discovered at that point that there was a name for what I'd been doing for quite some time, which was trying to understand processes and make them work better. And pretty much for that day, which I remember with great clarity, I've been doing nothing but process work ever since. Nothing to do with technology. Despite my electrical engineering background and early work in IT, I know nothing about IT these days. But I am about management. And I'm always pretty keen to point out to people that the M in BPM stands for management. That's the point of the exercise. So I've been doing that, and I'm work by myself now as Tregear BPM, but I've got lots of partners around the world. Leonardo here in Australia, New Zealand, partner in the Middle East, in Southern Africa, in India, and in North America. So I do lots of work with those partners around the world to, as I say, to reimagine management.
That's great. That's good. So obviously for someone listening right now that maybe they're not too familiar with business process management, or maybe they have, they've obviously heard of the phrase or the wording, and they've seen all the different definitions and descriptions, but maybe are still a little bit confused or overwhelmed with all the different perspectives out there. How would you define BPM?
Yeah, so I mean, you're right to say there's lots of definitions, aren't there, of BPM? You know, it's part of our problem, I think, in the process world is that there are so many meanings for so many things, and we're not going to change that. No one's going to come up with a global standard set of definitions. So we just have to live with the fact that there are different definitions. And you need to decide what you mean by it yourself and in what area you work, and then just deal with the fact that other people might mean different things. So, but for me, it's about business. It's about organizations and how they work. A process, I think we could all probably agree what a process is. It's the set of activities that transform a series of inputs into a series of outputs. And then I think importantly, certainly for me, the M for management is important. If you'll permit me, I often say to people, stop modeling, start managing.
Right.
And I don't mean that modeling is not important, of course it is, but it's a tool of management.
Yes.
And I think perhaps a problem that we have with BPM generally, organizations sort of try it and they say, oh, we tried that and it didn't work. But I think they did a lot of modeling, they did a lot of perhaps analysis, they might have tried to improve a couple of processes, but they weren't managing the organization as a set of processes. They don't. And I think you need that overall picture, and then all the other pieces will fit together inside of that. So for me, sorry, long answer, but the short version is I think BPM is a management philosophy in which we envisage our organization as a coherent set of cross-functional processes by which we execute our strategy by delivering products and services to customers and other stakeholders.
Right. So how do you think organizations get to that place where they're just modeling because they've heard they should model or they should map out their processes, but they're not getting any real value out of it? How does an organization find themselves in a place where they've, I guess, scrapped together some sort of modeling effort and then scrap it as quickly as it came in, because I guess the senior management level, they're not seeing that return on investment. They're like, why am I spending all the money and time?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure it starts with good intent and it's done well and professionally by people. I don't mean to be critical of these exercises when they happen, because they are necessary. And I think we all just know that stuff could work better. You know, everybody listening, watching here could make a list of 10 things in their organizations which could work better and should work better, right? And we have this sense that we don't quite know how stuff works. Together we can make it work. Separately, we're not so sure. So there's this kind of sense of danger, I think, that, you know, there's information that walks out the door every night. We store it here in, you know, very unreliable storage space. Walks out the door every night. We hope it comes back. Right? So we really worry about that. So there is a kind of human response to, okay, let's get to the detail. Let's capture this. Let's draw the diagrams. And then we do want to make processes work better, but, you know, it's a complicated thing to improve a process. It sounds easy, and sometimes it is, but, you know, it takes a while to make the changes, and over that time other things have changed, and, you know, tying back the return on investment on straightforward process improvement is not always trivial, because other things have changed and whatever. So I think that's how we get there, with the very best of intentions. And of course, every organization is still trying to make stuff work better. Everyone's doing that. But to be doing what I would think of as BPM, or I prefer to call it actually process-based management, I guess for an obvious reason, if we're actually doing that, then the process is what's driving what we're doing.
Right.
And I think that's the missing piece then, that we're not managing those processes, but we are trying to improve them from time to time. We're doing some analysis and we're doing some modeling. You know, sometimes modeling becomes a life of its own, doesn't it? And we end up with a gigabyte of process models. And, you know, there is no organization on the planet that has a business problem called we don't have enough process models. Not a known business problem. So if that's what you're going to go to the board meeting with, you know, we've done really well, we've modeled 1,000 processes, don't expect that to last. That's not a return. That is an investment, but it's not a return.
So talk to us about, or take us on a journey for, I guess, on one of your experiences where you've, I guess, entered into an organization, because you worked with many different organizations all throughout the world. Maybe one particular scenario, and feel free to obviously censor any company name or anything if needed, but where you've taken them on a journey from not managing their process to the point where it's almost like a light bulb moment where they couldn't believe that they hadn't been doing it until this point in time. They didn't realize how much value there was in actually managing their processes.
So getting it to start, of course, is the thing that has lots of variation, just getting a willingness to start. But I think the most general view, I guess, that we're looking for is to say, we've got, let's say it's the chief executive, or at least a senior executive, a C-level executive, who understands that the organization actually gets work done across the organization chart. And what we do in our organizations is manage up and down the chart. So the way in which we create and accumulate and deliver value is across the chart, and the way we manage is up and down. Now, who's in charge across?
Right.
Nobody. The org chart says nothing about that, effectively.
Yes, yeah.
You can get to the CEO and say, well, the CEO is in charge of everything, but she knew that, so that's really not helpful. That's so abstract as not to be meaningful. So you get to that point, you say, okay, so the way in which we execute our strategy is across our organization through cross-functional processes.
Right.
And we don't know what they are, we don't know if they're performing well enough, and nobody's in charge. Does that sound like a good idea?
Not at all.
Probably not. So assuming that doesn't sound like a good idea, the sorts of things that we would do then would be to start building the process architecture. Now, this is not a modeling exercise. This is a matter of saying, and I do this by starting at the strategy. So I just want to know, what is it that in our vision, mission, whatever our strategic documents look like, what is it we promise to deliver and to whom?
Right.
So, because that's what our highest level core processes need to deliver.
Yes, yeah.
So this is, if you like, the value propositions built into the strategy. And then those value propositions need to translate into high level processes. So to take a hospital, for example, where we did a lot of work, one of the high level processes was, in that case, care for patients. Another one, because it was a teaching hospital, it was develop healthcare professionals. So these are very high level, very abstract processes.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a core process, obviously, for a hospital, care for patients.
Yes, yeah.
And everything else is going to feed into that. So, and then we would work that down. If it's not been done before, we'd start there at that highest level, and we'd come down one more level, just decompose those processes, and then down another. So we'd have 3 levels of process.
Yes, yeah.
And we'd talk about core and management and supporting process. So we built a process architecture.
Yes, yeah.
And we'll have lots of meetings and lots of discussions and lots of debates and arguments about the words. And at some point, it starts to make sense. It's good enough. It's not perfect. And it's not set in concrete either. These things, continuous change means continuous change. So we don't want to say, okay, this is the architecture. It's going to be like this forever.
Yeah, yeah.
And at that point in our normal kind of project that I'm involved in, what we would do next is to say, let's pick some of those processes, not lots. Maybe it's 5 or 3, not 1. We can do better than 1. 3, 4, or 5. Right? And now let's get into the detail of those processes. That's when we do need the modeling detail. We need a process owner. We need to say, what are the process KPIs and targets? If this process was working as well as all of its stakeholders would want, what would it be doing and how would we know? And those are KPIs across the horizontal view, and they might be different to the KPIs you got out of your balanced scorecard style exercise. And if they are, that's fine, who cares? We're talking about the process performance. And then, and then start collecting that data and start getting it working, start responding to it, finding problems and opportunities, not just problems, of course. And just get that mechanism going, demonstrate it works.
Yes, yeah.
You could do it for one process if you like.
Right.
and the whole point of this is to make it incremental. I think where organizations say, okay, well, we've got lots of processes, hundreds, maybe we've got thousands of processes. Let's start, managing 50 of them all at once.
Yes.
I don't say it's impossible, but it's a heck of a lot of work.
Yes, right.
And it's a lot of people, and you better be delivering pretty quickly to maintain interest in that.
Yes, true.
But if you've got just, 2 or 3 or 4, 5 processes that you're involved in, it's a demonstration, isn't it? And the point of the exercise then is to make sure you have some successes in there. They won't all be successes, but have some successes. Communicate that, publicize that. So, okay, wasn't that great? Now let's do some more. And you just, you just want it to grow. We talk a lot in these COVID-19 days of flattening the curve, but in terms of building interest in process-based management, we want to steepen the curve.
Yes, right.
And we want to spread process infection. We want to get rid of the vaccines. We actually want this but to do it in a nice controlled way where we're delivering proven, valued business benefits.
Yes, yeah.
And that's not, we've got a bunch of process owners, or we've done some modeling, or we've got a really neat picture of an architecture. They're necessary, but not even close to being sufficient.
Yes, yeah.
So at the end of the day, you need to be measuring the performance of processes, understanding the impact of a lower level of performance, fixing the problem, maybe preempting the problem would be even better.
Yeah.
Also finding opportunities. What could we do differently with this process? How could we do this process differently? Is there some technology we could use, different way to think about it? Do we even need this process? Those kinds of more abstract thoughts are just as important as fixing some, this process takes too long problem. And demonstrating value.
Yes.
Then when you go to the executive committee meeting, now you've got something to talk about.
Yes, that's right.
Now they're taking interest, and now they're saying to you, hey, if you had some more money, could you do more of this? Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're talking the language of business, and we're managing, and we've got the process of process management is going well.
Yes, yeah. So I guess in those experiences that you've had, or the different exercises that you have done with different organisations, what has been the right ingredients or the best ingredients that you've seen that come together and to make that exercise fruitful and valuable to that senior member?
Yeah, so you've got to have a compelling reason, particularly if you're talking to people who don't really have much background or haven't thought about process management very much. You've got to have a compelling reason, because this stuff doesn't happen overnight. It happens in months, not years, but not overnight. So there's got to be some, you're talking to, you might start this bottom up or middle out, but effectively you've got to finish from the top down. You've got to get to the executive at some point. Right? So it's got to be strategic and compelling for them. So what's a problem we've got now, right now? Now that might be any kind of strategic problem. It might be some cost issues, some competitive issues. You might have a problem with regulators. Maybe your customers hate you, or maybe you've got some massive IT transformation going on. You kind of use whatever, you latch on to whatever compelling reason you can get. If it's part of an IT project, of course, projects come to an end. So you've got to be thinking very carefully about how the philosophy of process management continues beyond the end of the project.
Right.
If the project wraps up, then if process work stops, then that wasn't what you meant to achieve. So, but it's got to be compelling, and you've got to be able to really make that argument, and not just make it up. It's got to be real. We've got to get hold of our costs. We're about to get caned by the regulator, and regulators these days really want to know we're on top of our processes.
Yes, yeah.
They're getting the process message, so they come into you as you're a, whatever kind of organisation you are, a bank or an insurance company or whatever it is, and the regulator turns up. What they're effectively saying is demonstrate to us that you know what your processes are, and that you're in control of them.
Yes, yeah.
So you've got to find that compelling reason. Now, then you've got to find some critical mass of C-level executives whose eyes light up when you talk about process.
Right.
we've all had this experience. I'm sure you have a lot. Some people, the eyes light up and they get, and they think, oh yeah, okay, that's right, across, not up and across, both, yes, got it. And then others, you know, the shutters come down, they got no idea what you're talking about, and they're looking at their watch, you know, how can I get rid of this bloke? So, you know, and I don't know that your initial targets certainly aren't the ones who the shutters come down. You've got to find the others.
Right.
So there's got to be some enthusiasm in there, and then deal with the issues. A lot of people will try and make this bigger than Ben-Hur. We try and do too much at once.
Yes.
Because we've got lots of processes, big problems. Let's just get stuck in and do it. And I don't think it works. Right. I don't say it's impossible, but I think this kind of incremental steps. Let's just do a few, prove it, change it. We might need to modify some bits for our organisation. Once, if we've done 5, now get another 5. Right? Now we've got 10. Yep. Then maybe the next time you can do 15. So now, when you're building capability and you've got the evidence there, people are showing respect for the whole idea. You know, you've got to demonstrate that you're a solution, not a new problem. Because all the managers and executives you're talking to, they got plenty of problems.
Yes.
They're not interested in you coming along and saying, hey, I got a new problem for you to worry about. That's not going to work. You know, this is just communications and marketing 101, right?
Yeah, that's right. So talk to us, let's talk a little bit about the, I guess, incremental versus radical innovation to a little bit, let's spend some time on that. And I guess obviously if an organization embarks on some sort of radical innovation exercise where they're, and I'm sure you're well aware of many exercises that have resulted in processes that have been cut down from a number of days or weeks down to a couple of hours or something like that, where there's been a restructure of how they've done things. And obviously now with a lot of startup businesses trying to just disrupt industries and to, I guess, take something that's always been the way it has been and do it completely different, that I guess brings a lot of value to that area. Talk a little bit about, I guess, the difference between incremental and when it is appropriate or the right time to embark on something that maybe is more radical. I'd imagine that you would need to, there's a lot more at stake embarking on something that requires the time and energy to do something on a much scale. But talk to us a bit.
So I think, firstly, I think of improvement and innovation being in terms of the scope and scale and benefit and risks and everything else being two ends of a spectrum. So process improvement, process innovation, we need to be doing both. And there's some different aspects and tools and techniques involved, of course, but we're always trying to improve our processes. And sometimes lots of times we're going to do small changes, and then sometimes we'll do big changes. Of course, if all we're ever doing is small changes, then we asymptotically approach some limit.
Right.
And then at that point, to get better, we need a step change.
Yes, right.
So I think from time to time, process improvement needs to have some remarkable improvement, some innovation.
Yep.
Now, I think what we need to be doing, if we've got processes under active process management, so let's imagine we've been going for a while and the things are ticking over nicely. So we've identified some high impact processes. And that might just be 20 processes.
Right.
The 20 processes that if we don't get right, there'll be stuff going wrong all day.
Yes, yeah.
So what are those? Let's imagine we've got those 20 going. And we've got KPIs for the processes. We're collecting process performance data. We're reporting it. We've got nice ways of really, identifying the real messages in all of that data. And we've got someone whose job it is, a process owner, shall we say, whose job it is to think about that performance across there. Right? So we're all the time looking at that. So let's imagine a process owner is looking at that stuff every day. Every week or 2 weeks is having some sort of meeting with the managers who execute the process, the cross-functional process. So there's a lot of discussion going on about what we could do, where the problems are, KPIs, is there a problem? Is there, maybe it's heading in the wrong direction? That kind of thing. So then we can decide what the problem is, right? And then we can say, let's do some process improvement project by whatever methodology one might use, NEST, Sprint Pip, Lean Six Sigma, whatever it is, something you've made up, whatever mechanism we're going to do, because now we're doing that to solve a problem.
Yes, yeah.
You know, if we're going to do process improvement, I think we're much better off starting out knowing what the problem is.
Right, right.
What's the problem we're trying to fix?
Yes.
We might stumble across some other things as well. So then we'll know whether it's a big change or a small change that's required.
Yes, yeah.
And we'll know something about what the organisation's up for, what else is going on. You know, I think about when we check in for an airport for a flight. We haven't done that for a while, but I'm sure we remember how to do it. You know, in almost any traveller's lifetime, we used to, and sometimes we still do, just queue up for manual check-in. And then we had the machines, and then we can check in from home. Pretty soon, the fact that your smartphone has entered the terminal will check you in.
Right.
I mean, what else does it need to know?
Mm-hmm.
Roger's here. Have I got a bag to check in? Then I'll do that separately. But I don't actually physically need to queue up. So there used to be a lot of work going on to say, how can we get people to physically queue nicely?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do we put the queues this way or this way? And, you know, how do we, lots of work went into that. Good work. Physical queue management. But the question now is, what do we want the queue for? What if you didn't have to check in? Right. So we've gone for these little incremental things about how, you know, physical queue length, depth, before we put on some other people to check you in, to challenging the whole notion of check-in. Because it's probably, you know, if you're an airport or a vendor, a retailer at an airport, you're not so interested in what the traveller does with their time. You're interested in how much money they spend airside in the terminal.
Right.
And that's where you want them to be spending their time.
Yes, yeah.
So why are we slowing people down, queuing up to check in or queuing up for security? How can we do all that sort of thing better? Mm-hmm. So we start out saying, what little things can we do to make the queue faster? To the other end of saying, why are people queuing up at all?
Right.
We don't want to have a good queue experience. We want to have a no queue experience. Right?
That's right.
Zero check-in. That would be an ideal, I think. For, imagine the money that everyone would save. We'd be happier.
Yeah.
Here we are. We've got a booking. We just walk in. What else do you need? Now, it's never going to be quite that simple, but that's a target. And obviously, there are two ends of that spectrum, I think.
Yes, yeah, right.
We need to think about both. Most of the changes we're going to do are going to be small, medium changes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be doing massive change every day.
Yes.
Continuous innovation is going to be a bit tiring. But occasionally we need to, otherwise we'll just reach some level and stop there.
Yes, yeah. So if someone's listening right now that they, maybe as you're talking, ideas are coming to their mind of the, I guess, areas of improvement within their own organisation, they're starting to spot, I guess, inefficiencies that can be improved and things like that, but they still need to obviously get that buy-in from the senior management level. What are some of the objections or some of the resistance they may face when approaching senior management? Obviously, they've prepared themselves, they've understood where the value is going to come from, and maybe they're not a seasoned salesperson, so they're still refining their pitch to senior management. But what are some of the I guess the most common occurring objections or resistance that you found from organisations, or I guess especially that exec level, against process management?
So I think people just misunderstand process management, really. And the executive, you come to executives and managers are busy, everyone's busy, we don't have a lot of spare time to fill in. and they think you're saying to them that you want to radically change the entire way organization is run and do it in the next week. Not going to happen. We do want to make pretty radical changes to the way we manage. My book is called Reimagining Management for a reason. But we're not going to do it there's no big bang approach. I don't think it even works. Right? So I think we scare people off by making them think, oh, it's massive. Also, then you start talking about cross-functional management. Now, what are all the functional managers supposed to think?
Right.
Their job disappeared, has it, or what?
Right.
So you need to be able to think about that, describe that very well, because I think there are ways of avoiding all of that continuous conflict. We do need to think about the performance cross-functionally, but that performance is going to be delivered by the functional units. That doesn't change. So you need to be able to get through all of that, and then to be able to say, this is the small, controllable project that we're going to do to demonstrate the value. And, for me, ideally, the first thing you would do is put together that process architecture.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a matter of a few weeks to do that, and not even full time, assuming you know what your strategy is.
Right.
If you don't know what your strategy is, you've got a different problem.
Yes.
But everyone's got some sense of strategy, and I don't mean it needs to be highly polished and whatever. As long as people know what they come to work for, then you can build the architecture out of that reasonably quickly. Because then you can start working on particular processes. Which ones should we choose as the demonstration processes? And just do it, but just slowly do it. Demonstrate the value. Don't expect people are going to say, "Oh, okay, let's change the whole organisation and its management structure overnight. We don't quite know what it's going to look like, but yeah, let's do it anyway." I mean, no one's going to do that. So just take it slowly and build it. Do lots of nice communication. Build a fan club internally. You only need a handful of people to start this.
Right.
Not everyone.
Yeah. And let's talk about, I guess, the current climate that we're going through. You mentioned it before with COVID-19. Obviously, it's disrupted a lot of businesses. Some organisations have been wiped out altogether, and some organisations are actually thriving during this time because it's worked in their favour. Talk to us a little bit about how BPM can be of value. Obviously, there's a lot of other things for organisations to worry about at this time, and different fighting for that priority. But talk to us, I guess, the value that BPM can provide in a time like this, where I guess for a lot of organisations, everyone's working remotely, everyone's working from home, and there's new challenges that they're having to deal with on a daily basis now.
Yeah, so I think it just highlights the benefits that are there even in the so-called normal times. It's about understanding how we work, how we get stuff done, knowing with some certainty how well we're doing that. Not just hoping it's all coming together. The line "hope is not a strategy." That's not what the strategy says. We hope it all works out, but actually knowing that. And then understanding how that works when maybe physically it's all different now. Everything's moved all around the place. Maybe to understand where the risks are, because it's not just our own organisation we're dependent on, it's all of our suppliers and whatever, that whole kind of supply chain. Now, people who are seriously in the supply chain business know all about that and always have, of course. But many of us, I think, are discovering that we are all part of supply chains.
Right.
And there are things that we can and can't do, and then also, of course, as we recover and get into whatever the new normal will be, there are going to be a lot of cost pressures.
Yes.
And time pressures.
Right.
And serious decisions to be made about where we should focus.
Yeah.
Where do we prioritize investment of money and time and resources? What is the best thing for us to do? And I think that's going to be important as well. So it's just an opportunity. I think what so many organisations and people are discovering is that there is a new way of working, a different way of working that we thought was impossible before.
Right.
When you and I were first going to do this, the whole thing was, when will you be in Brisbane next, Roger, so we can have a meeting, right?
Right.
We didn't say, oh, we could do it on we could do it online.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I think in a funny way, when you are restricted or have limitations put around you, it's amazing what ideas and strategies you can come up with.
Yeah.
Have those limitations in place.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and it all comes back to knowing how we get work done, and that's the process piece.
Yeah, that's great.
How does it work? So, what are the models? What's the performance? What is it? What should it be? Is there an impact of that gap? What could we do? What are the new ideas could we feed in?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Now, for someone listening right now that they're gleaning a lot, and obviously we can only cover so few topics in 30 minutes. It's such a broad, diverse topic, and we've only been able to scrape the surface today. But for someone that's listening that might want to, I guess, further that learning, and they want to learn more about BPM, business process management, and maybe the next steps their organisation should take, I guess where would you point them? Like, obviously you've got your book and well, a couple of books and different papers and things like that. Talk to us a bit about what are the next. Where would you point someone if they came to you saying, Roger, I want to learn more? What next?
Yeah, and that's a question I get asked often, and I don't know that there's a obvious cookie cutter answer for everyone. What I tell people is what I did, and that was having heard Michael Roseman speak, I thought I need to know more about this, so I just started reading. Now, there wasn't as much to read 20 years ago, but there was still a lot. But there were some good books around. So I read some of those. And then I got on to other places like bptrends.com, which is, for 20 plus years, BP Trends has been publishing material, and it's all there on the website.
Yep.
It's an amazing resource. I mean, I write a column there, so I have a vested interest, but it's an amazing resource because it's been there forever, and it publishes stuff all the time, and you need to subscribe, but it's free. I mean, extraordinary. The other place that I write a column is the Business Rules Community, brcommunity.com, and that also has lots of material. But you've just got to, I think, understand the broad canvas of what everybody means by process automation and improvement and management, all the various things, which is what that book Questioning BPM was trying to lay out, and then decide which bits of that you want to spend more time in. Right. Or maybe you want to be an expert on everything, but that'll be tough because it's a pretty big canvas. Yes. But if there are particular areas you want to get into in the technology or performance or management or modeling, or whatever it is you want to do, then you just need to keep at it, I think. There's lots and lots of material to read today. Business life is a bit like that generally on any topic. We're overwhelmed with information. But I think you've just got to, decide, at least for now, maybe it's just for the next year or something, this is what I'm going to focus on.
Right.
I want to know what, modeling excellence looks like.
Yes.
Yeah. Get stuck in and understand that, and what works, what good looks like, what bad looks like, and then I can move on from there. Or I want to do process automation or whatever it is, and get focused on it. But look, there are plenty of good books around. I mean, obviously, I'd recommend mine. There's my website, which gives you pointers to a few of those places. But BP Trends and the Business Rules Community are two good information websites where there's lots of material to read. Not all of it will agree with everything else, of course.
Yes, yeah.
In questioning BPM, there are, the premise of that book is here's a bunch of questions and different people answer them, and they have sometimes answers that are not the same.
Yes, right.
It was a deliberate part of the book just to say these are the different answers, and they're all perfectly good answers, and there'll never be one answer, so you've got to decide for yourself what it is you want it to be.
That's right. And I think that's one of the great things about this series, or what I am finding after having interviewed quite a number of people, is that you're going to get a different response from a different person. Will have spent their time focused on a different topic or focus, and I think or perspective, and I think that's where the value comes from. Is that as you guys are listening to me talk with Roger right now, you're going to be obviously learning a lot, and there are a number of different speakers that we've already interviewed that you're going to learn from their own different experiences and background, because someone that works maybe internally or on the front line carrying out the process might have a different experience to someone that's more in senior management that has looks at process from maybe through a different lens, I guess you could say. But as I mentioned before, guys, we've only got, you can only fit in so much within half an hour, and I know Roger's got so much more in him than half an hour, so we'll try and get him back on for a follow-up interview at a later date. But Roger, I just want to thank you so much for, giving us your time and your knowledge and wisdom, and thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thanks a lot. Happy to talk.